So what we want, we recognise the board has to function, but the idea that you will appoint the chairman and the board for a year and then have the option to do it for another year. It is, the interim we accept, but the interim doesn't have to be a year, right? And what we want is the whole thing scrutinised in here and discussed in detail in here as to how all this is going to work, and to ensure that it is genuinely open and transparent and diverse, that it's not subject to untoward influences from particular industry stakeholders or interests or political influence, but that it's done in an open and transparent way, and that therefore there shouldn't be carte blanche for the minister over what is that is an extended period, but that it comes back in here to be discussed in detail, so that we have that level of transparency, given that this is all being done in a rush. So our amendment is quite reasonable in that regard, and I think you should accept it.
Do you want me to? Well, if you wish.
Yeah, I do indeed, and I thank Deputy Matthews for his intervention there, and I do, again, it puts it in context. I had mentioned it earlier on, just before you arrived, is that if you look at the existing system that's there right now, it isn't fit for purpose on the appointments. It certainly is not, and it does exclude people too. An open, transparent competition process is open to everyone. And I said that earlier on, but to reinforce again what Deputy Matthews has said, and he's correct, it's to be open for everyone to apply. And we've detailed in the legislation the type of skills and expertise that we would be looking for, which is a vast improvement on what was there before. To answer specifically to Deputy Matthews' question with regard to marine ecology, we're currently in the process. The only appointment I'm making under the existing legislation is in relation to the specialised marine planner, and we very clearly designated within that detailed knowledge and expertise of marine ecology and biodiversity is an absolute prerequisite for that role. PAS are actually in the final stages of that process, because we need to move ahead to have that expert in the board who will head up the marine planning team there, obviously with the express intent of moving forward with the ORE and our offshore renewables, and actually underpinning and moving forward then with our Marine Planning Act and everything that we need to do within that in relation to our marine protected areas and that. So that process is well underway. Expect that to be concluded very shortly. I did say to members earlier on, you know, we can't have a cliff edge between the old system and the new one. The appointments that are being made, which again isn't a power grab, I said that earlier on too, it is no way, shape or form. We're appointing interim people to the board to literally add resources to it so they can do the work, so the board can actually do the work that it needs to do. I've met the staff in the board. I went down there a number of weeks ago. There's some absolutely brilliantly committed people who've gone through a really, really difficult time. They need to see movement on how we're going to restructure how the board works itself, how the board functions itself, because the board has, and its reputation, I've said this publicly, I'll say it again, because of what has happened this year, has taken a serious battering. And this legislation here is the start of that reform process. And we do need interim measures in place. I think, in fairness, that's been agreed by most members here, that we need to ensure that we have our interim chair in place with the functions and the powers that she needs to actually to exercise her role within it. But when people refer to Section 6, it's important you read all of Section 6. I'm not going to, because I don't want to delay deputies there. I would just suggest that you do. Deputy Matthews has gone through the subsection A of that, but right the way through. And yes, indeed, it says, look, the Minister shall establish a suitable, independent, objective and transparent procedure in accordance with the recommendations. Recommendations may be made to the Minister in relation to the appointment of ordinary members on the board. So we are going to establish a suitable, independent system. It will be in place. I've said to Deputy O'Brien and to members here as well, I have absolutely no difficulty, and I've given a commitment here this evening, that when that procedure is fully worked through, and we do have an idea about what we're looking at, and we need an efficient way of doing this too, that I will absolutely come back to the committee with it. But the legislation needs to pass. The legislation needs to be able to provide us some flexibility in that space of the type of process. But it will be far better than the process that is in place now. And I can say, as someone who has had experience of actually having to appoint people to the board and also to deal with that process right the way through, the nomination system could lead to 20, 30, 40 names coming forward. All of those people who are nominated and have applied for a position, all interviewed or met effectively. No recommendations in written form made whatsoever to any minister. You know, and that's the position there. So I would actually say that there's a greater risk using the current system or retaining the current system to the integrity of a new board Pleanála. There's a much greater risk if we're to retain that system, and I don't want to do that. And this government doesn't want to do that, because we need a board that sits at the apex of our planning system that is fit for purpose, and that the legislation underpins it, but that we need to structurally change it. And we will have the Consolidated Planning Bill, which will be a further advancement of this, which will bring forward further changes to the board and its structure, which I outlined in my remarks at second stage. So what I'm saying today, I do understand and respect the views of deputies that they've raised here this evening, and the thrust of the amendment that is there. But I put it to you that Section 6, as it's outlined here, we're setting out very clearly what we're going to do. I've said to deputies in the record of the House here as well very clearly that when the procedure is, we've concluded the work on that, we will go back to the Joint Oireachtas Committee and let the Joint Oireachtas Committee know. But we need the legislation passed. People who've tried to portray this as a type of power grab, and as I said earlier on, are going back to the future with bad practice before, it's anything but. It's actually, it's a fundamental change in the way in which members of the board are going to be appointed into the future. And that will be further enhanced by the structural changes that we're going to make to the board, which I won't discuss here, because that will be subject to pre-legislative scrutiny as well by the JOC. That will be in the first quarter of next year and into the second quarter, that we need that Consolidated Planning Bill passed. But I won't detain deputies any further. I have said that I won't be accepting amendment number 1. I think the discussion around it has been useful, but I won't be accepting it.